our country has this cooked meal program. It is the biggest in the world. No other country has a state-run program of this size, feeding every day 110 million children. Nowhere in the world, no one is doing this, what our government is doing. In early 2005-06, when the cooked meal program was being implemented all over the country, by and large, the emphasis was hunger. Today, the last 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, I would say, even the government's thinking is not just food, but nutrition. The PM-POSHAN is rightly poised. They want to ensure nutrition, carbohydrates, proteins, micronutrients, all of this, and to ensure right quantum of consumption of the food. The priorities are very clear, and the government is doing and setting more and more funds for this program. I remember reading this story after the Chandrayaan. The scientists and engineers who are working in ISRO, they're not from the premier institutions in our country like IITs. They were actually second or third tier institutions. This shows the depth of talent in India. And for that talent to be nourished and to blossom, you need to provide food, hunger, nourishment, education, and opportunities. In Bangalore, our temple, small temple, 6 acres temple. Our whole land is only 6.5 acres. We have about 1,500 employees. How can you say a temple cannot create employment? By just revival of Indian spirituality, we can wipe out poverty from our country.
Welcome to NIJ Podcast with Ananya, episode number 9. Today is a very, very special episode because we've traveled all the way to Vrindavan to really interview and get in a conversation with Shri Chanchalapathi Das ji, the Vice Chairman of Akshaya Patra Foundation. For those of us who probably do not know the scale of the program that Akshaya Patra Foundation leads, they almost feed 22 lakh children each day in this country with hot cooked meals in government schools. What makes Akshaya Patra Foundation very, very unique is that at the very core of this foundation is the spiritual consciousness, is the Krishna consciousness. And yet they have management principles that have been written, that have been made case studies out of by the likes of Stanford and Harvard as well. So let's get started with this conversation with a spiritualist and see what's in store. Namaste, welcome to NIJ Podcast with Ananya. This is episode 9 and today we are joined by Shri Chanchalapathi Das ji, Vice Chairman, Akshaya Patra Foundation. Aapko namaste and welcome.
Namaste, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So this is, I think, our first episode where we are really having a conversation with someone who has given his or her life to spiritual, religious, social service. So I think it'll be quite exciting, the conversation, especially for youth. And I think the first question that anybody would ask you is, what was your point for spiritual calling? Like as a child, did you always want to be part of a spiritual, faith-based social organization, or when did that moment come to you?
Actually, I never expected that I would don a hairstyle and a dress like this when I was young. I was very passionate about science as a school student, as I grew up in Bangalore. And I wanted to become a scientist, a teacher, a professor, and teach and do research. And that was my very strong inclination. In fact, as a school student, I had participated in a debate or a talk or something. Why I want to be a scientist.
Wow, okay. You're that convinced.
And I had won the first prize and so on. So that was my general direction and aspiration and ambition. So to say, there was a non-linear shift from what I was trying to do. At a certain point, I became interested in spirituality, Indian spirituality, and Indian spirituality as presented by Srila Prabhupada, the founder of ISKCON.
Right.
And when I came across these things, this is much later in college days, and then at some point I made up my mind that I should be more devoted to this and dedicated to this. And so it happened that way.
So when was the first time, like what was your first interaction with, was it going to an ISKCON temple, like somebody in the family or in your social group? How did you come to know about it?
I had a friend in pre-university days. We used to call it pre-university those days, 11th and 12th.
Plus two.
Okay. Plus two now. And we were both very interested in, I was more interested in science and he was interested in philosophy and spirituality and such things. And we would attend lectures and talks in Bangalore, whatever we could, opportunities that came up. And then he went to IIT, Bombay, and I went to another college in Coimbatore in South India. And there in IIT, my friend met a senior of his who ragged him. You know, those days there was ragging. And that senior spoke to him and introduced him to ISKCON.
Okay.
And he came back after the first semester. I was returning after the first semester. We both met again in Bangalore. And he took me to ISKCON. And that is how I got interested. And I must quickly tell you, that senior who ragged my friend is the chairman of Akshaya Patra.
Wow. Okay. That is an interesting coincidence or story or maybe destiny.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's how we were a few of us, we all came together. And Madhu Pandit Das, chairman, who was an IIT from Bombay, a senior to us. And he joined ISKCON. And then along with him, at some point, we were about a dozen of us from different colleges, different places. We all had jumped into ISKCON.
How old were you when you...
When I joined ISKCON, I was very young. I was 21.
21. So at 21, you already was committed to that spiritual...
I made up my mind. And it was about 4 years before that, 3.5 years before that, I had become involved in ISKCON, reading the books, understanding, interacting with people. And I must say, you asked what was that important moment. An important thing, you see, two things happened. I was reading Srila Prabhupada's books. They were all in English, so something that I could very quickly relate. And it was about Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads and the Bhagavatam and such things. Another important thing that happened was, around the same time, early 80s, Prabhupada's biography, Prabhupada had passed away in 1977.
Okay.
So my coming in touch with ISKCON was late 1980, around November, December of 1980. And so in 1981, 82, around that time, his biography was released for the first time. And then I read about Prabhupada's life. That made a different kind of an impact in me as I reflect now. Because Srila Prabhupada's life was in perfect harmony of what he believed and what he taught. So, you know, sometimes people speak big things philosophically and give great lectures and all that. And you go and see their life, it will be completely different.
They don't walk the talk.
They don't walk the talk. In Srila Prabhupada's case, it was a perfect walk of his talk, and there was so much coherence and harmony between what he said and what he believed and what he practiced and what he lived by. I had actually, in my interest in science, I had also studied a lot of biographies of scientists like Einstein and many others. And then I always found somewhere they're doing such great thinking, such great pioneering, profound science work. But then look at their life. It looks pretty ordinary. I used to feel that kind of a thing. But then here I found Srila Prabhupada speaking great things and living by those things and making immense sacrifices and taking so much trouble to live by what he was teaching. These kind of things, as a young mind, I think it impressed me a lot. And here there is a sincere person. And, those kind of things impressed me a lot now as I reflect.
Right. No,
After 40 years.
it makes sense. No, absolutely. When we talk of ISKCON, we talk about Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
In very, and of course, these are very profound messages and they have deeper meanings. But to those who are watching this podcast, before we get into talking about the Akshaya Patra Foundation, what should they understand when you say Krishna consciousness? What does that mean?
I will do it where I'll say it as briefly as possible because it's very profound what you have asked. And you must remember that when I was reading about Krishna consciousness, when I was reading Bhagavad Gita, the background mind for me, which was processing this information, was grounded in science.
Right.
Science is something that's very universal. You say water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. That's true in India. That's true in America. That's true in Africa. That's true for a Hindu. That's true for a Christian. That's true for a non-believer. Because it's talking about reality. It's made of hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms mixed in a certain proportion, bonding in a certain way. This is science. So I was looking for something that is real and universal, and not some kind of a sectarian belief of a certain group of people in the world, and another group of people have another belief, and that's okay. This is also... No, I wanted to know what is the real thing about this world.
Fundamental principles.
Fundamental principles, the fundamental truth, an absolute truth, which is not relative. According to... It's true for everyone, at all times, under all circumstances. And that truth which is operating and governing the whole universe, not just, some at the both at the microcosmic level and at the cosmic and the macrocosmic level. What is that? And that's what science is exploring. What is the truth behind this? So I saw that in Indian spirituality, that very same quest exists. What is that fundamental truth which is governing and upholding everything? These kind of things, that was the perspective, that was the prism that I was looking through. And Srila Prabhupada presented. In fact, Srila Prabhupada presented because the Vedic literatures present that way. The Bhagavatam, one of the final works of Vyasadeva, Veda Vyas, it's one of the concluding... in the hierarchy of Vedic literatures, there are basic philosophical information, there is more advanced, more... It's like, like if you take any subject in this world, like say mathematics, you have basic mathematics. We teach that in schools, primary schools, middle schools. And when you go higher and higher, you get to learn higher mathematics. You go to college and you go to postgrad, you have very advanced mathematics. Very much the same way in Vedic knowledge also there is a hierarchy. And Vedanta is considered to be at the highest level because Veda Anta, end of all knowledge. Veda means knowledge, an end of knowledge, ultimate of knowledge. And Srimad Bhagavatam is an exposition of the Vedanta Sutras. And so it begins by saying that now we are going to explore the absolute truth. Satyam Param Dhimahi. Param Satya means that absolute truth, a transcendental truth. Now we are going to explore and meditate and appreciate and understand and comprehend and reflect on and even perceive that. It goes that way. So I found this to be very, very interesting. And so we all have consciousness, right? Coming back to your question. There is consciousness. This chair doesn't have consciousness. We have consciousness. If there is an ant crawling on the floor, ant has consciousness. Maybe a minute degree, we are a little bit more advanced consciousness.
Just a spectrum.
There is a wide spectrum of levels of consciousness. Now, there is a consciousness by which you become, there is a consciousness at which you are conscious of that fundamental reality and truth that is governing the world. And that ultimate truth governing the world is also a consciousness. It's a consciousness which is governing this world. In this world, there is minute consciousness like you, me, and the ant, and the bird, and the beast, and all of them. And there is this inanimate things. And there is a consciousness which is governing all these things. And that ultimate consciousness is the source of everything. Both this inanimate things and animate sentient things. And that is the source, the cause. And that has no other cause. It is the absolute. If it has not that, there is one more thing I would like to look at that. So it is that ultimate consciousness, which is the source of everything, including our consciousness. And that ultimate consciousness, one of the features of that consciousness is irresistibly attractive. Okay? Everyone is drawn to that original consciousness. And because everyone is drawn to that original consciousness, sarvam karshayati, one who attracts everyone, that original consciousness is called Krishna.
Okay. And Krishna, the root word, is related to akarshan.
Akarshan. It's connected to sarvam karshayati.
Right.
Attracts that who attracts everyone and grabs everyone and can hold everyone's attention. And we are all his part and parcel.
Manifestation.
So that original consciousness, because when you say consciousness, there is a personality. You see? And so there is the original consciousness, there is a personality of that original consciousness. And that original consciousness is Krishna. So I just made it very succinct that there is a lot of depth to these kind of things, and we can talk about it for hours and hours and hours.
Yes. But good. I think this sets the context for the kind of work that inspires and drives a foundation like Akshaya Patra Foundation. I think that is what makes Akshaya Patra Foundation unique. So coming to Akshaya Patra Foundation, how did this idea come about? And it's, of course, it sprung out of ISKCON. But how did this transition happen? Whose thought was it? Like, where did it start? And we'll soon in the podcast come to know because I'm sure a lot of people know about Akshaya Patra Foundation, but I'm hoping that through this podcast, a lot of people will get introduced to the great work that it's doing.
In 1997, we had inaugurated a very grand ISKCON temple in Bangalore. I would like to invite you to ISKCON Bangalore one day, and your viewers to ISKCON Bangalore one day, if they have not done so far. And it's a very interesting temple, a modern temple, and has some architectural modern elements and architectural traditional temple architectural elements. So it's a blend of the two. And that was inaugurated by the then President of India. And it became a very popular temple, and it has become a very popular temple. 3 years after that, we had one donor, supporter of our temple, who came and spoke to us about social initiatives. So that triggered that we should do something in the social development sector, along with what we are doing. And at that time, when we were toying with various ideas, an idea of a school meal, midday meal program, and all of these ideas came up, along with Bangalore, IT education, young people, IT training, all of those kind of different ideas we were discussing. And at that time, one anecdote in the life of Srila Prabhupada came to our mind. Srila Prabhupada had inaugurated a temple in rural West Bengal in 1972-73. That place in West Bengal is Mayapur. That's the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Prabhupada comes in the lineage of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was a 15th century Bengali Bhakti cult founder, popularizer. So there a Krishna temple was being inaugurated, and a lot of guests had come from Calcutta and from other parts of the world, Prabhupada's followers. And as part of the celebrations and the event, a big feast was served to all the guests. And after the lunch feast, Prabhupada was in his room. It was on a second floor of a building. And he had big windows. And he heard outside his window dogs barking and children screaming and crying and those kind of things. So he walked up to the window and he looked down. He was shocked to see that there were leaf plates which were strewn there after the feast, and poor village children were shooing away stray dogs to gather some food. Srila Prabhupada was a very, very kind and compassionate person. When he saw that, there were tears in his eyes. He called the leaders of ISKCON at that time to his room, and he said, just see, we have invited Krishna to our temple today. And Krishna is the father of everyone. And where there is father, his children should not go hungry. So he gave a direction to the leaders of ISKCON. You should ensure no one in a 10-mile radius of a ISKCON temple, Krishna temple, no one should go hungry, especially children. So this direction and this anecdote came to our mind, and then we thought that we are a temple, and we have one kitchen. We had multiple kitchens in the temple, and there was one festival kitchen, which was used about 5 or 6 days in a year. Rest of the days it was an idling asset. So we thought that let's cook some meals and take to some government schools nearby and feed the children there.
This is which year?
In the year 2000. So you must recollect, in the year 2000, there was no cooked meal program in our country, except in a few states. In Tamil Nadu it was there, in some parts of Gujarat I am told, and in some parts of Kerala I was told. So, but otherwise there was a dry ration distribution. We did some survey initially, and a child would get 3 kgs of rice or wheat if the child attends some number of days in a month. And we did the survey and we found that the child takes the 3 kilo of rice home and the father sells it and buys liquor or something. Finally, the benefit's not going to the child. So what we did was we cooked meals in our festival kitchen, and we took it to the school, and we served in 5 schools on the outskirts of Bangalore. Actually, we had no big idea at that time. Honestly speaking, sometimes people ask, you must have had a great vision. Actually, we didn't have any vision. We were simple people. We were
just following the Krishna consciousness. I think that inspiration.
You said it. That's the inspiration from the Lord and Srila Prabhupada. And then we thought that we should do something. And then we went ahead. And we knew more of Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads, and we didn't know much about social sector and development and such things.
Because I think a problem is that, how we are taught in business schools these days, that there have to be a big business plan, strategic plan, and, that is how anybody would typically imagine a development agency to, flourish.
Yeah.
And so it's what you're talking about is a very, very organic inception of Akshaya Patra Foundation,
Right.
following the spiritual or message that
Yeah.
is
That is the whole point. Things were developing gradually, organically, spontaneously, and we were responding to the situations with compassion taught in our, Vedic literatures. So we started serving. In fact, when we went to the school, I remember going to the school and talking to the headmistress and headmasters. And we said that we want to come and serve your children. And in these government schools, they're used to having someone from Rotary Club, somebody come and on some birthday, they give some chocolates and some gifts and such things to the children and they go away. And so they thought that we want to come on a certain day and feed some food to the children and something. No, we said, no, we want to come every day and feed your children. I said, what? Every day? Okay. They welcomed us. And so we started serving every day. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, we went back to the school and asked them, how are things going on? We were very pleasantly surprised and very encouraging statements we heard. The teachers said, now that this was in the month of July of 2000, very early of beginning of the academic year. And so the teacher said that the news has spread in the village that a meal is being provided in the school to the children. Many children who were enrolled in the school but were not coming to the school have now started coming to the school. Right. The attendance has increased. Then the second thing I remember the teachers telling, now there is a certain energy level of the children. There is a level of enthusiasm. And we see that. And that's inspiring even the teachers. The energy level of the children in the classroom, outside the classroom. And so, we are also very encouraged to teach the children, these kind of things. Like, when we came back and we thought that, okay, it's good that we are doing this and we should continue to do this in these 4 or 5 schools. And we were feeding, I think, about 1,500 children. We didn't have any government permission, nothing. Now when I look back, now what we do, we go through a long bureaucratic process of getting approvals. We had nothing. We just went and started serving like that. And they welcomed us. Next thing that happened was, over the next few months, maybe 4, 5, 6 months, we would get a letter written by the headmaster or headmistress of a government school telling, we see your vehicle carrying food pass in front of our school. Can you please stop and feed our children also? We got these kind of letters. You look at them and say, just put it in a folder. And then over 6, 7 months, we had a bundle of such requests. Right. And we counted them, and then we found that there were requests for about 30,000 children.
Wow. Okay.
So, we as Indians, we know poverty, we know hunger, we know this, we see all around us. So we become pretty thick-skinned about it.
Indifferent.
We are indifferent, we are not sensitive about it. But this was shocking. And mind you, this is story in Bangalore. I'm not telling some story in some, less developed state and city in our country. Bangalore is supposed to be the IT capital and all that. We were thoroughly shocked to see this. That there is so much need for food in schools and children. And that's when we thought that we should do something. Once again, we went back to Srila Prabhupada's, his writings and his conversations, letters he wrote and room conversations he had. And there was another situation where Srila Prabhupada had said that we should distribute more and more food. Food distribution is actually God's work. God is the provider of food for everyone. There is a bird flying, there's an insect crawling. God is providing food to everyone. And it is God's work. And we as God's servants, we must
further that.
And Prabhupada always said, you see, there is no hunger, malnutrition in animals, in birds, in insects. Everybody is getting food they want. And each one of them have different kinds of food. Imagine those different, deep sea. We see some of those animals and fishes, and They require a different kind of food. And God's providing everyone except human beings. Why is this? Very, very, And then Srila Prabhupada explains, actually God provides everyone's food, but it is the human mismanagement. Some people hoard it more than they want, and some people don't have even basic needs. Prabhupada gave another story. I must share this with you. If you take a bag of rice and empty it in the street somewhere, a few birds will come, they'll peck a few grains and fly away. The first man who comes there and sees, he will look around and grab the whole bag and run away. This is human nature, to hoard more than what we need. Animals take what they need and they depend on God's arrangement for the next meal. So we are known for, our greed makes us hoard. There is one famous United Nations study which says, if I remember right, if 7 richest people in the world part with the extra wealth they have acquired, we can solve world's poverty and hunger problem. 7. Not 700, not 7,000, not 700,000. 7 people.
That's the scale of inequity.
Look at the scale of inequity of distribution of wealth that's happening around us. So we thought that we should do this in big scale. And Madhu Pandit Das, who is the chairman of Akshaya Patra, I told you he's from IIT. He's from IIT Bombay with civil engineering background. So he and a few others got together and designed the first kitchen. In fact, we visited a few places around in India, in Bangalore, to see mass feeding programs. There was one temple in Karnataka where they were feeding about 30,000 people every day. So we went and visited that temple, and the temple leaders arranged a tour for us and to see the kitchen and how it is cooked and how it is served. At the end of the tour, when we were coming away, some of them, they came and whispered to us as a word of caution. So don't get into the feeding program.
Okay.
You cannot stop it. And it may look very interesting to start the feeding, but to sustain it on and on, not easy. They were good people. They were, meaning good to us. They were trying to tell us something, be careful about it. We absorbed all that we had heard and seen, and we came away. And we started designing a kitchen to feed 30,000 children. And by 2001, late 2001, the kitchen was inaugurated in Karnataka. At that time, the chief minister was S.M. Krishna. And the MHRD, it was called MHRD, now called the Education Department of Government of India. Minister was Dr. Murli Manohar Joshi. We interacted with him and we invited him, and he happily came. In fact, I must also acknowledge and mention, it was Dr. Murli Manohar Joshi who heard about this program that we want to feed more and more children. And then he said, you should call your program Akshaya Patra.
Oh, really? Okay.
Which is, a story from the Mahabharata where Draupadi had that pot from which she could draw unlimited food. And it was a blessing she had received from sun god. It's there in the Mahabharata. And so that's how we coined. And then our first kitchen was inaugurated, and we started feeding 30,000 children. We were very, very worried. How are we going to maintain this? But there were some statements of assurance from Srila Prabhupada, where he said that feeding is God's work, and you continue to do that. Radharani will provide you all the money that you need to feed people. So
before we get into how did this model now progress, right? You've spoken about institutionalizing the first kitchen, which was part of the temple. I have a question there. Growing up reading some of the history books, if you look back at Indian history and the history of what temples meant and did ages ago, and I think that culture is quite prevalent in South India as well, was that temples were more than places of merely worship, but were also sort of community centers providing for the community at large. Do you think Akshaya Patra sort of furthers such a model for so many temples, so many faith-based organizations, which are, of course, day in and day out as we speak, sort of preparing, say, prasadams for so many of its devotees? And is it really furtherance of that sort of work?
I very much agree with that perspective. I would say temples were centers for human transformation. It was worship. It was bringing people together for spiritual enrichment. It's for dissemination of knowledge, culture, bringing people together, giving a meaning and purpose in life. You see, that's what spirituality does. And these are all very important aspects of human enrichment and transformation of his enrichment of his society. These were part of our culture in Bharat, in our country. So there were temples, there were priests, there were well-read pundits and scholars, and they would give all of this knowledge free of cost. That was the whole thing. This knowledge, access to knowledge was made very, very democratic, if we may use that word, accessible to everyone and at no cost, so that there is an overall societal development. That is part of the thing. You asked about temple and, transformation and bringing about these kind of things. Yes, it is. Temples are meant for that. And I would think that Akshaya Patra is a new avatar of those kind of transformational activities in a modern setting, where we have technology, where we have management principles, and addressing, these kind of things have all come into Akshaya Patra with compassion as the core.
As the core. You spoke about management principles. In fact, I got to know about Akshaya Patra at Harvard when I read the Harvard case study on Akshaya Patra. So what are the top, and I know I'm asking a very entrepreneurial question here with my entrepreneurial cap, but what are the top 3 management principles that you think Akshaya Patra Foundation could share with social entrepreneurs?
You see, one of the things that as we went along, as I said, we had no great vision, but we were learning as we went along. One of the important things for social entrepreneurship is we have to do things on a big scale for impact. And that's especially true in our country.
Yes.
All the societal problems we have are of big scale. And so we wanted to do this on a big scale. We wanted our Akshaya Patra Kitchen. You see, the very structure, the DNA of Akshaya Patra is that we want to do it on a big scale. So we have centralized kitchen where we can cook for about 25,000 children, 50,000 children, or even 1 lakh children. And when you have such a big kitchen, you can use technology. And when you use technology, you can bring efficiency, you can bring control. You can ensure the quality of the meal in terms of nutrition, in terms of food safety, and in terms of taste. All of these aspects of quality of a meal, it should be a delightful meal. And so scale is an important factor, and your model should be replicable. In fact, Akshaya Patra, today we have 67 kitchens all over the country in 14 states and a few union territories. And we are serving about 22 lakh children every day.
Every day.
Yeah. So scale is an important factor. The second thing is that I would think in Akshaya Patra, good management practices and good accounting, financial practices of transparency, and being accountable to our donors. So in Akshaya Patra, we have very good auditing practices. We have an annual report. Our Akshaya Patra's annual report won the Gold Shield Award from Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. And we won that consecutively for 5 years. And we made it to the Hall of Fame in the Institute of Chartered Accountants. And if I am right, we are the first and probably the only NGO to be in that space. So this was another important factor, to be transparent and accountable to our donors who contribute for the program. This was another important conscious principle that we have practiced. And a third important factor, maybe a few more, but the third important factor for a social entrepreneurship program to do well and to succeed, which we did in Akshaya Patra, is to work with the government. Because government has money, has resources, has power, has influence, it's mighty. And you want to do big things on a big scale, you better work with the mighty forces of the country. And we have to work with the government. And so government, good things happened in the course of time. The first important, we was, as I mentioned, I'm just, being a little bit erratic, jumping here, there. We were very worried. How are we going to run this program? So much money, even 30,000 feeding. The first interesting change that Dr. Murli Manohar...
So we are going back to Bangalore?
Bangalore, 2000, 2001, 2002, I'm talking about.
When you started to sort of scale up the kitchen
scale up
in
from
Bangalore.
1,500 to 30,000 and so on. It was at that time, one important change was made by Dr. Murli Manohar Joshi. The government of India had a dry ration distribution program as the midday meal program. As I told you, 3 kilo of rice or wheat given to your child. He made a change that if there is an NGO doing a meal program,
hot cooked meal
program, that 3 kilo of rice can be given to the NGO. That is a big support for
the raw ration can be given.
Can be given to us. So we got rice, which was very important for us, and that helped us. And in the year 2003 or 4, there was another public interest litigation going on in the Supreme Court of India. And the Supreme Court gave a mandate to the state governments, central and state government, that it is a constitutional obligation of the state to ensure food and nutrition for people. And a cooked meal program is a wonderful way to provide food and nutrition to children. And so every government should introduce a cooked meal program in the state, and the chief secretary of the state is responsible for this.
Okay.
And so this was 2003 or 4, and all the state governments and government of India started allocating some funds for this, and we started working with the government. So the government started giving us a certain amount. Today, we get about 50 to 55 to 60% of the running cost of a meal from the government. So we are working in partnership with the government. We are an implementing partner of the government's midday meal program. Midday meal program today is a national program, cooked meal program of our country, of our state governments. And so we work in partnership with them as an implementing partner. We get 50% of the cost. And we set up the kitchen using donations from business houses, from individuals. So it's actually a public-private partnership.
PPP model.
A PPP model for social entrepreneurship.
Right.
And for social development. So working with government, state and central government, working with business houses, working with philanthropic people, and a spiritual organization, bringing all these things together. One more thing. You asked me to talk about 3 things. I'm talking 4th.
Okay.
Another thing that we realized was when we started scaling up multiple locations, our second location was Vrindavan after Bangalore.
Okay. Which is where we are sitting.
We are sitting here. We had a kitchen here, small kitchen at that time. Today we have a bigger kitchen where we feed about 1.2 lakh children. And at that time, it was very small. And because Krishna, we wanted to be in Vrindavan after Bangalore.
Yes.
So we started here, and we were feeding about 500, 600 children at that time. And so when we had to scale up, replicate, and when we started growing to about, say, 2 lakh, 3 lakh children, we realized at that stage you need to put systems and processes in place. You have to have professionalism. And we were spontaneously doing it like a startup would.
Yeah.
But now we had to have proper control,
SOPs
and processes and professionals, doing that kind of bringing that management professional layer. So today, Akshaya Patra is a confluence of spiritualists, professionals who have good management practices and principles for operations, for finance, for HR, all of those kind of things, working with the government and working with the business houses and corporates and philanthropic individuals. It's a confluence of all of these things coming together for the good of a child.
When we talk about midday meal program, we are almost at the confluence of education, nourishment, and child hunger and child development, cognitive development. Do you think the current government has appropriately been able to prioritize child nourishment through programs like midday meals?
Certainly, I would think so. The governments are actually, our country, very concerned about this. They have realized that we have to feed children and educate them. Then we will have a different India. You see, that's so critical. And in fact, I must share with you, the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, how the midday meal program has evolved in our country and how the government has been so sensitively responding to it.
Right.
In early 2005, 6, when the cooked meal program was being implemented all over the country, by and large, the emphasis was hunger. And how to ensure meal is prepared and it is fed to the child rightly, because that was not there. It was like zero to providing a meal. Today, the last 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, I would say, even the government's thinking is not just food, but nutrition.
Not just filling the stomach,
but now another layer of, another degree of
Poshan.
Nutrition. So not just food security, now the government is talking about nutrition security.
Right.
That itself is a very important development in the paradigm of thinking of the government, which we should recognize. Our country has this cooked meal program. It is the biggest in the world. No other country has a state-run program of this size, feeding every day.
In fact, I have some statistics, if I'm not wrong. It's almost providing hot cooked meals to over 11 crore children across more than 11 lakh schools in the country. That's the scale. Going back to your point on scale,
110 million children. Nowhere in the world, no one is doing this, what our government is doing. So this is an incredible achievement in our country. And it has had tremendous impact. We have come across many, we have done a lot of surveys. We have done a lot of studies, like you mentioned, Harvard study and Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad studies, and many other surveys and studies we have.
Scientifically documented.
Very scientifically independent third party doing it. And we not only have data, we also have a lot of anecdotal evidence. I'll share with you one story. There was one boy, he shared this story with us in Bangalore. His family were first-time migrants from a village to a city, and his father became a security guard. That's the easiest thing that one can take up as a job. And so when he came to 7th standard or 8th standard, he went to his father, and then the father said that, now 7th standard you have come to, now you have grown up, you have to work to take care of the family. You can't be in the school anymore. Typical story of a school dropout. And then he went back to his father after a few days and said, Papa, in our school, a meal is being provided by Akshaya Patra. So, if that's the case, can I continue? And the father thought over, and then he said, okay, if you're getting at least one meal and you don't burden us, you can continue. He remained in the school, and then he did up to his 10th standard. And then we also have in Akshaya Patra, to our Akshaya Patra children who are under our program in the government schools, we provide a scholarship.
Wow.
He got a scholarship. He did his 11th and 12th. And then he did well. We gave another scholarship. He became an engineer.
Wow. From
the
factory being a school dropout.
And then he got a job in HCL Computers. And we have recently, we had another story. CEO was making a presentation about Akshaya Patra program to a small group of audience in London. And at the end of the presentation, there was one Indian girl. She put her hand up and she came up and she said, I studied in a government school in India and I received Akshaya Patra meal and today I'm here.
Wow. What a story.
There are innumerable examples like this. I know another story of a girl whose mother was a vegetable vendor. And she continued, and a meal in the school was an important factor for the family to make a decision that she should continue to be in the school. And she did her chartered account. She became a CA in her first attempt, and she's doing something, working for Deloitte or something like. These kind of stories. And another thing that comes to my mind, I remember reading this story after the Chandrayaan. I think it was New York Times or Wall Street Journal, an article like that, about ISRO. And then it mentioned that the scientists and engineers who are working in ISRO, they're not from the premier institutions in our country like IIT. They were actually second or third tier institutions. And they have, because all the first tier, all the Microsoft and Google, and they take away scoop the cream from the IITs, right? It's the next level. And then the article said something very significant. That stuck in my head. This shows the depth of talent in India.
Right.
This is what I have seen also. Now we have Akshaya Patra all over the country, and I get to travel. I go to Assam. I got to go to Jorhat in Assam, in Guwahati, and Tripura, and different parts of the country. And I have seen, and there is tremendous talent in our country. And for that talent to be nourished and to blossom, you need to provide nourishment, food, hunger, nourishment, education, and opportunities. And I think our governments are they're having the right focus on these kind of things. And in fact, I'm aware there is another discussion that's going on. I have also heard that our Honorable Prime Minister is also aware of this. We have also made provided some information for the ministry to think about. Another important thing is the breakfast program.
The breakfast program.
Because when children come to the school, the first half of the school hours, not necessarily everybody has had a good breakfast. And breakfast program, we have tried in small ways, in pilot, done in small ways. The breakfast program does another interesting thing. Children come on time to a class.
Yes.
You see? So we only ask for 15 minutes. You have to come 15 minutes before the regular time, and children show up. And they are back in the classroom the first minute onwards. These are all important things, and I've heard that the government of India is also very seriously looking at the breakfast program. If that is introduced, that will be another game changer in our country.
Yes. Talking of government programs, what is PM-POSHAN? And we know that Akshaya Patra is possibly also in an advisory capacity, part of some of the steering committees. But what is the vision of PM-POSHAN according to you?
As I said, the PM-POSHAN is rightly poised. They want to ensure nutrition, carbohydrates, proteins, micronutrients, all of this, and to ensure right quantum of consumption of the food, because children are very playful. How we have seen how mothers run behind the child to feed the child. Every child has gone through that, at least in the urban settings. And this is another thing that we have noticed. Children are very playful, and although we have worked hard and taken the meal to the child in the school, they are sometimes distracted. They want to go and run and play and pick all the vegetables, put it aside and eat the rest of these kind of things. So we have a program called Eat Well program in Akshaya Patra. It's a last mile responsibility. After we have delivered the food, we do this as a volunteering program. We get engineering college students and other people like that in and around. We get the students to volunteer. We are developing a SOP, a checklist of what the students should do. And we have been piloting this in different places. So to ensure that the cook-cum helpers in the school, there are some people who are involved in distributing the food. We try to inspire them to ensure children eat well. So this is the last mile responsibility. We inspire them, we encourage them, we tell them that you are doing the mother's work in the school. Usually a mother has 1 or 2 children, but you are having 500 children. You have to ensure that you have to, I'll tell you one more. When we were doing this kind of a program, one of our Akshaya Patra staff who was overseeing this program, she narrated this interesting story. And she got all these women together sitting in a circle, somewhere here, I think in Uttar Pradesh. And she was asking them, how many children you have? And one woman said, I have 3 children. Another woman said, I have 4 children. I have 1 child, and so on. And then one mother was very, very hesitantly, very shy, and she said, I have 7 children, thinking that, I'm having too many children or something. And then she said, shall I tell you how many children I have? I have 1 lakh children. Because I work for Akshaya Patra, I work in this region, and we are feeding 1 lakh children. I think I have to play the role of a mother for 1 lakh children. Yeah. These kind of things, and then inspire them. Because, these people are so important, but they are not celebrated heroes in our society.
Right.
They are so important to ensure nutrition, hunger, these things are addressed and the children get well educated. So it is rightly, the priorities are very clear, and the government is doing and setting more and more funds for this program. And the other important thing is the Anganwadi, which is another great program in our country. And which is from 0 to 5 years of, that's when the cognitive development and all these things are happening. It's actually not even 0. It starts with the maternal mother, pre-delivery and pregnancy and so on. So these are all very, very important programs. Now you see, our country has great programs, lot of resources behind that. Our country is not a poor country. There's a lot of money in our country, and the government is spending. But because we are a very big country, it becomes a challenge for the government in implementing it
to the last mile.
That is where civic organization, NGOs, should step in. That is where people should step in and play their little bit of the role and to make all these great programs of the government successful. That's how we see as Akshaya Patra. We want to be that, bringing that people, business houses and volunteering spirit of people, all of this to come together to make the government program successful. It's immensely satisfying to be part of this kind of a thing. Right?
In fact, I'm sure a lot in the audience know about this already, but Akshaya Patra Foundation was also awarded with the Gandhi Peace Prize by the Prime Minister. What do such awards really do? Because I know a couple of people that I spoke to before getting into this conversation. They were like, oh yes, Akshaya Patra Foundation then got the Gandhi Peace Prize by the Prime Minister. And that is really how they came to know about the great work that Akshaya Patra Foundation is doing. But both at the level of the foundation, what were probably your interactions with the Prime Minister? I'm keen to know, what does he think of this work at the Akshaya Patra Foundation, and how long has that sort of association been?
Very early, maybe 2006 or 7, we got an invitation from Gujarat.
Okay.
As the Chief Minister, he invited us. And we made a presentation. And he immediately made quick decisions. And in about, I think, 2 months, we were up and running.
Wow, in Gujarat.
In Gujarat.
Back there.
We started a pilot feeding program in Gandhinagar. And he came and, as a Chief Minister, he inaugurated the program. And subsequently, we have had many interactions. You talked about... So he made a mention of Akshaya Patra in the Gujarat Assembly. We heard about that. And, for us, it was very gratifying. A recognition by the Chief Minister, mentioning on his own. And I think there was some question or some discussion or some debate in the Gujarat Assembly. And he mentioned, and the news, electronic media carried that. And it was kind of an inspiration. It was kind of a thing for all our team.
Right.
Akshaya Patra is a big team. Today we are about 9,000 employees, staff in about 150 missionaries like me, and about 9,000 staff. So there were a couple of more interactions, and I'll share with you one interesting story. At that time, Narendra Modi ji was Chief Minister. And in Akshaya Patra in Bangalore, we were feeding in the prison on the request of the government. We have had some requests like that, and we work with the government, and we can't say no to the government. Government is big and mighty. And so, although we want to feed children, once in a way, we have accepted these kind of programs.
Right.
And we were feeding, and there was good response. The Home Minister, I think, in charge of the prison, and he invited us to feed. And so we did that. We did that for about 4 or 5 years. And then there were some challenges, and we had to discuss. It was at that time. So we had gone to Gandhinagar, Gujarat, and we were meeting the Chief Minister, Narendra Modi, at that time. And we were asking for some land and some allotment for building a bigger kitchen. We were in a rented place. And he was hearing us, and he was... Then I mentioned to him about the prison feeding program.
Hmm.
He's full of ideas. He wants what is good for, and he, like a very sharp thinker. And then he said, okay, I want you to visit the Sabarmati jail.
Hmm.
And in the Sabarmati jail, we will give you some land. Can you set up the kitchen there?
Okay. Right.
And feed the children and also the inmates in the jail?
That's
Then
That's very innovative thinking.
that's very innovative. But then I was thinking, oh my God, jail. We go and serve in the jail and come away is one thing. And we have to go and be there and supervise and no, a little hesitate. I was a little hesitant. And he sensed that. And then he said, no, Swamiji, some Prabhuji or something he said, this Sabarmati jail is not an ordinary jail. That's the jail where Gandhiji was. He was trying to inspire us.
Right.
And then I said, sir, you see, Akshaya Patra has a lot of processes and then automation and computers and accounting practices, all of this stuff. I don't know whether we will get that kind of skill and all that. So he made a phone call. He spoke to somebody in, I think, police, some officer in Gujarati. And then he came back and he said, you want boiler operators, you want accountants, you want all of them are in prison. We can provide all of them. Whatever objection I was seeing, he was finding a solution because he was so, he found that it's an interesting idea. And very soon at the end of the meeting, he said, so-and-so will take you to the Sabarmati jail. Right away. From his office, we straight drove to Sabarmati jail and he made us go around. And so I saw that he's very persuasive. He's looking for new ideas. And when he gets a new idea, he is behind that. He won't let go, yeah. So these were some of the things. And then later on also, we have heard him speak, even as a prime minister. We have seen some video clips in some other forum. He's talking about a startup, example of a startup of Akshaya Patra and these kind of things as a model. And so he's been very kind and he's been very, very supportive. And he gave us the Gandhi Peace Award too. And so we are very, very grateful to him.
Another innovation under Akshaya Patra Foundation that I learned about, especially where we are talking out of. So we are currently at Vrindavan, and I heard about the Barsana Kitchen, the community kitchen, where you are now experimenting with a women-led kitchen. How is that different from your existing model, and why innovation in this direction?
Women empowerment, these are all important things in the world, in our country, and our government has also taken these things very seriously. Generally, we have about 20-25% of the workforce in a kitchen are women. So here in Barsana, we have set up a small kitchen to feed about 10,000 children. And I don't know if you're familiar, Barsana is the place of Radharani. And so there's a very nice ancient Radharani's temple. A lot of devotees go there to worship Krishna and Radha there. And so we are in Barsana, Radharani's place. Let's have an all-women kitchen there.
So again, the inspiration is, the spiritual core is the inspiration for.
There's always some spiritual connection and spilling over into the development sector. And so we set up this first kitchen. And, I've made a couple of visits there and it has been running. There is so many talented people. And the young girl who oversees that kitchen, she's from Agra. And very smart, no less than any of the men who running kitchens, and so we are very impressed. There is and they're all together, and even the drivers there, we have women drivers, small electric vehicles to take the food to within about 3, 4, 5 kilometers, and so it's completely women kitchen. And it is doing very well. And we want to do more such kitchens in the country.
Right. So then gender is another realm that you're adding to your work.
Absolutely.
Besides, of course, education, nutrition.
Empowering women and equality and inclusion and all of these factors.
Right. So what's next for Akshaya Patra Foundation? Like, what are the, I won't call them challenges, but like, what's the way forward? You spoke about possibly the breakfast scheme, the women's kitchen. You're already out there in 14 states. Um, where is the boat rowing towards now?
Another important factor that we are working on is to make our kitchens more and more green. So how we can have more solar energy and how we can make it green with zero waste, whether we can consume all of the things that right now we have. And in many of the kitchens, we have biogas plants. We use all the vegetable waste and the food waste and recycle the water. And so these are how to make more and more kitchens go green is an important factor. And another important thing is that how to sustain this program. As I mentioned, about 60% of the running cost comes from the government. We have another 40 to 45% we have to raise money from public. And we don't have a corpus. It's a hand-to-mouth situation always. So, but of course, last 23 years we are running this program. And by God's grace, we have not had any problem. And we have been doing. And so to ensure that we have all the money required at the right time so that we can pay our vendors, we can pay our employees, and we pay well our employees. We are very, very compliant as far as ESI, PF, and all those benefits are concerned, to see that all our employees do well and their children also get scholarship. Wow. All these kind of things. So we are very employee-friendly, employee-centered. And we have one great place to work award many times, year after year. We are certified as a great place to work. And we are trying to increase that to more and more kitchens. And we have quality concerns, quality control and quality management, food quality management, food quality, food safety issues. The food has to be safe, the food has to be nutritious, and the food has to be delightful. We want to make sure all these things. And we are also very careful that we provide the meal that the children are used to. So we give in South India a South Indian meal. We give in North India, we give a North Indian meal. In Gujarat, we give a Gujarati meal. In Assam, we give an Assamese meal. So we are very sensitive to children's local cultural, palatal preferences. Not that you are a poor child, whatever I give you, you eat that. No, we are very careful about all these things. And so these are all some of the things. And then we have we have 67 kitchens. We have another 15 kitchens in the pipeline to come up in the next 1.5, 2 years' time. And we have a kitchen coming up in Jammu. And so like this, we are spreading our expanding geography. And we are also inspiring other organizations to learn if they want to implement we have an open door policy. Any NGO can come. We are ready to share our learnings, our experiences, our kitchen design, all our SOPs. We are ready to share and train people. There are a few NGOs of small sizes here and there who have taken this practice and running these kitchens.
And making this model completely open source.
Yeah.
Right. As we sort of come to the tail end of this conversation, my question to you is about the youth of this nation. You interact with them, you feed so many children each day, you're interacting with a lot of young volunteers, you're employing so many of them. Do you see that, say, in the past decade or so, have you seen the youth themselves evolving in terms of what they think about social service, what they think about nation building, or what are their perceptions about spirituality, culture? Do you see some sort of churning happening there?
Oh, in a big way. It's happening in a very big way and very, very interesting. And young people are you talked about spirituality and nation building. There is, we were doing one analysis in Akshaya Patra of the donor's profile. In the last few years, 3, 4, 5 years, the number of younger donors are much more. Usually our donors were all in the age of 50 and above. Now, recently, our statistic shows that it's about in the age of around 35, between 30 and 40, good number of donors that is increasing. That's the young people. That they are getting good jobs and they are sensitive about our country and they want to participate in some way in contributing for the social development. They want to give back. These kind of ideas are coming. It is bound to happen. It's going to happen more and more in our country because we have a young population, a big young population, and we are doing well in economy, the businesses and jobs and such things. And they will naturally, there is that kind of a feeling. And there is a spiritual revival too. There is a lot of interest in spirituality in our country. In fact, we have a youth program focused on young people seeking spirituality. In fact, we are not able, the demand that we have, we are not able to meet. We are not able to do justice. We don't have enough monks trained to handle the number of young people seeking spirituality.
Their quests.
Yes. So that has been our experience in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in Chennai, in Pune, in Delhi. In all these places, we have a very active program and there is a lot of interest. And, I want to share with you one other interesting thing that I came across. I was talking to one student and a professor from Cambridge. This professor, interestingly, she's working on the subject impact of religion on economy. So that's her field of study. And she had a student too, and the student visited, and I had interaction with both the professor and the student. And then I was discussing with them. I read one economist in our country made a criticism of things happening in our country. Government should not be focused on temple building. They should be focused on building industries because industries create jobs. Temples don't create jobs. This was his statement. I read this about 2 years or 3 years back. It struck me because we run many temples here in Vrindavan. We have a big temple in Bangalore I mentioned to you. In Bangalore, our temple, small temple, 6 acres temple. Our whole land is only 6.5 acres. We have about 1,500 employees. How can you say a temple cannot create employment?
Right.
So I discussed with this professor about impact of religion on economy, and I was telling her, and she also got very interesting. She also affirmed this kind of a thinking. If we have a revival of temples and spirituality in our country, there are, like if you take Mahabharata circuit, there are so many places mentioned in the Mahabharata, and there are places connected with that. Same with Ramayana. All over, all the way up to Sri Lanka.
Yes.
Right? And if we revive these spiritual centers, and as India flourishes with economy, more and more people get jobs, they're all at their heart seeking spirituality. They will all go travel. You need hotels there. They will travel there. They will take taxis there. They'll go to restaurants there.
Local economy.
All of this will bring up business. And, I have a feeling that some systematic study has to be done. She was very excited, this professor from Cambridge. She said, I'll seriously look at it. I said, by just revival of Indian spirituality, we can wipe out poverty from our country.
That's so profound.
Isn't it? So such a potential, such an opportunity exists. And we are seeing that more and more people are coming to holy places like Vrindavan. They go to Haridwar, they go to Ayodhya. They'll soon start going to Ayodhya in bigger and bigger numbers. And a lot of people will get jobs, and, cooks will get jobs, housekeeping people will get jobs, security will get jobs. This is going to create jobs and can actually wipe out poverty. So it's a very inappropriate statement that only temples don't create jobs. This is absurd. I was thinking that how someone can make this kind of a state. They don't know reality. So I think spiritual revival in our country and the spiritual interest is very, very positive, and we can leverage that for social development and economic development within our country. And it's going to serve our spiritual purpose, and it's also going to serve the social development purposes. All these are possible, I think.
And then Akshaya Patra is, of course, a great model that exemplifies to the very core what does Indian spiritualism really stand for, which talks about, serving others is sort of serving the larger consciousness, which you started with.
Absolutely. I've had many interactions with our staff, about 9,000 staff at various levels. And many other, situations I have had interactions. And they all acknowledge it is that spiritual core which motivates us and everybody else, that we are feeding children. And this is something very spiritual, very special.
The best worship.
The best kind of worship. And, that is a very, very important factor for the success of Akshaya Patra, I can confidently say.
My final question to you is, a lot of youth is spiritually inclined, wants to do something for the nation, for the society. Some of them might be tuning into this podcast, might be listening to you. What's your message? What's your final message to the youth that wants to give back to the society? Where should they start?
I would say, number one, I made all these statements. I'm just summarizing them. In our country, there is a lot of talent. And children from underprivileged families are not having the same kind of opportunities that children from privileged families get. And so, if the youth of our country, who have also done well, are doing well, can in some way participate in some volunteering program, going to the children and inspiring them and creating some kind of an opportunity for their talents to blossom and inspire, create talent, and in different ways get involved, then there is a huge talent blossoming in our country, and these children will do well. They will solve all the problems of our country, now and the future, because they are equipped with the talent and the knowledge and the skills. And so in different ways, I think the young people of our country should participate and not leave it to the government alone. Yes, government is doing its part, but we as citizens also have an important role to play in the development sector. So development sector should not be just left to the government. Government has resources, they will do. But if we work with the government in a sensitive, careful way, I think it is going to benefit the country in a very big way. And we have in Akshaya Patra programs, internship programs, fellowship programs to create opportunities for young people to volunteer with us in different capacities, in different ways. And we welcome young people. They can write to us. They can visit our Akshaya Patra website, and we have a place where volunteering. And we would like to expand and encourage more and more young people to do this.
Thank you so much. My heart is full of gratitude for all the time and the interest, the passion, the empathy, the kindness with which you've shared your experiences, insights, your tapasya, and the work and life of Akshaya Patra Foundation, ISKCON. And I hope that everybody, including me who's heard you speak today, is inspired to contribute their own bit in nation building.
Thank you very much for the conversation. Namaste.
Namaste. So here we are, after a deep and a profound journey, starting with spiritualism, talking about child hunger, talking about malnutrition, education, school meal program, women empowerment, what is the importance of philosophy and religion and spirituality in our lives, and finally, what is it that the youth is up to these days? So if you're interested in more such conversations about such diverse topics which reflect the diversity of Indian thought and Indian development, do let us know in the comment section. Keep watching, keep liking, and keep getting inspired to be a better you each day as we go along.